Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. In many respects, the future of work is unnerving, with global news headlines highlighting the predicted loss of several jobs due to technology. It is clear the way we work and live is transforming, and the skills needed to be employed are evolving. Joining us now to look at how work will likely change and some ideas on how to prepare for this change is Ngozi Adebiyi, CEO and lead consultant at OutsideIn HR. Welcome to the morning show, Ngozi. It's a pleasure to have you.
Excited to be here. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
So my first question to you is, as the future of work changes, is our jobs going to change?
Great question.
That's a great question.
Is a robot going to be here doing this next time?
Interestingly, I think I caught something on TV once when, not recently, I think somewhere in Asia where they try to program a robot so she could sort of read the news. So
I hope they fail.
I hope
so
that,
I guess, who knows? You might not be seeing us soon.
No, but I mean, that will take some time for sure. And then I think the guy even said it would take at least over 5 years for them to try and...
Oh, that's not
That's a long time.
To tune
the
her.
whole generation.
Yes. But I mean, it's exciting times because there's the pros and the cons of the challenges of work. And I think the reality that it has hit us in Nigeria for sure. So the point around gamification or people just sort of trying to find a fusion between AI, technology, and then how people work is also sort of in the force. So people are talking about the future of work. Let's speak to the millennials. What's happening? What do we need to do? But I think in the midst of all of that, there's also the criticality of what are these skills, how are we transitioning them, and how are we measuring as we go. I think that's the biggest piece that we sort of need to hone in on.
So before we get into gamification, which just sounds like fun, it sounds like just such a fun word to even say, can you just address well-meaning but potentially misguided parents who are still insisting that their children must be doctors, lawyers, engineers, parents really going for these qualifications that may not really be relevant, that may be obsolete, and even people in the current job market who are finding that they work so hard to get these degrees and doors are not opening, they're not getting jobs. What are those skills? How do they demonstrate those skills in their CV, in an interview? How do they demonstrate them in the workplace?
It's a great question. So first of all, I think it's important to even mention what the skills are. The World Economic Forum had this Future of Jobs report, top 10 skills to have by 2015, and then sort of projecting into the future to 2020. The number one skill that was to be had then and still is complex problem solving. That's one. Creativity, critical thinking. How do you coordinate with other people, and how you ensuring that people have flexible thinking? I think those are the first things to sort of even look into and say, for the degrees that people are sort of studying and the careers we're looking to go into, how are we honing the skills? What are we doing to ensure that we're picking up problem-solving skills? Because to be honest, I mean, we're talking about doctors and lawyers, but some of the roles that exist today, makeup artists, YouTuber, like the bloggers and things like that, they didn't even exist 20 years ago, you know what I mean? So again, even some of the jobs that the kids today might be sort of exploring in the next couple of years, some are just even evolving. So I think with the parents, I think what's important is to let the kids be, but I feel that the kids also themselves have a voice these days. You can hear kids saying, I want to be an actress, but I really, really like to code, and then I play music and musical instruments. So in the future, honestly, and even now, because we talk about the future, but we have 15 and 17-year-olds interning. You see that they have a flair, they code, but then they want to sing. And then they also don't mind doing one or two things on the side, maybe come to a hospital to sort of relook what's happening and give insight. So going forward is going to be probably like job sharing, where you sort of have people who, I'm a doctor, but I code and I play jazz over the weekend with my friends. And as funny as it may have sounded for us to tell our parents this maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, that's what it is now, because most of the kids might have a 10-year-old. If you went for their career day, a lot of them are like, I want to be a soccer player, I want to be an actress, and then I want to draw and be an artist. Not a lot of them are really talking about medicine and engineering and those likes, even though they sort of might have the skills. Because we're looking at problem solving. The kids are asking more questions around thinking. And the thing is also that I don't think that we're putting enough effort into even thinking.
So that's good. That actually brings me to because I wanted to unpack some of these skills for the future. And the first one you said was complex problem solving.
Yes.
So I'm thinking even simple problem solving. I'm not sure how many people have that still talking of complex.
Yeah.
Help us unpack what that means and give us examples of what those roles look like, where that is the critical, the number one skill you need, which is this sort of complex problem
solving. Okay, so first off, it's just even skills. So it's not even roles. So in all of the roles that exist, all of these skills are sitting somewhere. Think of today. We came in the morning. There's a flow of work here, even at the studio. And the question is, people have to, first and foremost, have to think about 2 or 3 steps ahead of where we're supposed to be. You know what I mean? That's one thing. If you're thinking of, say, someone in a restaurant, or you show up in a restaurant, or you know, like customer service, or even an exec in the office, the question, complex problem solving is really how are you going to unpack what it is that you have that is in the way of what you're supposed to be doing? And a lot of times we're very linear in our thinking with that. So, you know, so it's from point A to B. So we just have to gather and let's move. I think movement is not also, is motion, but it's not necessarily moving forward.
Right.
And I think that's another, we have a problem. You know what, hey, let's move it. So the gamification, just sort of tying back into the conversation, we have these games that we partner with an Israeli firm called Accelium. And the game itself shows you a man who you're supposed to get out of a room. It's filled with furniture. So in trying to solve the problem of getting Gil, his name, out the door, people are just like, you know what, move that furniture. And I ask, why did you decide to move the green couch? Because the green couch is in front of the guy. But the green couch is in front of the guy, but there's a blue couch behind it, and there's a cabinet beside that. If the back cabinet is blocking the blue, and the blue is blocking the green, then his immediate problem is not the green couch. His immediate problem is this furniture. So we need to get this furniture out of the way, to get the blue couch out of the way, to get the green one out of the way, to get him out. So just that whole taking a step back and not totally being super Nigerian. You know, Nigerians are like, no, now move it first. Like, okay, calm down.
Everybody, let's take a break.
How, you know, is it end to beginning is one of the problem-solving techniques. So taking something and just sort of looking and saying, okay, where's the end and how do I walk it back? That's one. Another is temporary parking. A lot of times you're like, to get him out the door, he must move forward. But sometimes you have to move him halfway and move some furniture behind him before you then can get him out the door. And a lot of times people feel like, you know what, I didn't know I could just sort of move him forward and then move him backward before I take him out. But nobody said you couldn't do that. So there's always that mental blockade that we sort of have where we're trying, we really truly want to solve a problem, but we're not sort of looking at, is there a technique to it?
Which is great in a way, because sometimes we have to move forward to move. We have to go backwards to move forward sometimes. So
yes. So that's essentially what it does. Teaching those techniques, but then you're playing the game. So the whole motive is I'm trying to get this guy out the door. Yeah. But then getting him out the door, I'm making all these mistakes, and it seems like, oh my God. And in that mistake, you're like, oh, I could have done this. So that's what it is. So when I go to work tomorrow, I shouldn't really be looking like I need to get this out the door this way. What's blocking that and what's blocking that? And then you play the game and then sort of a moving steps and, you know, because you have to infuse fun. Adult learning, you have to engage them. Fun, there has to be competition. There's a leaderboard. You're competing maybe with other people, whether you know them or you don't know them. People are just like, you know, there's that sense of, I have to have a high score, you know, but then
the competitive bone never goes away.
Absolutely.
So this is Accelium Growth Centers that you're talking about.
Yes.
Do you get a sort of, how long is the course and what's the certification you get, if any? Okay,
so there's a certification, the 2-day certification that you can get to be able to teach complex problem solving and decision making. And so you become a 2-star Accelium facilitator on their website and things like that. And as you pick up other ones, sort of like analysis and deduction, flexible thinking, execution, strategic thinking, those are like half-day certifications that you can come in and get. And then when you do get it, you get a star. So you could be a 3-star facilitator, and Bella could be a 2-star facilitator, and I could be a 4-star facilitator, depending on how many we have in our toolkit, as it were.
So who are the people that this is sort of geared towards? Who takes these courses?
Okay, so first off, this is supposed to be for technically everyone, you know what I mean? Like from point of view, like if you look at private sector or the government or even the military, because they also engage the Israelis, the Israeli Defense Forces use Accelium as part of their training. And so whether it's government or corporate or military or paramilitary, that's sort of like the market, for lack of a better word to use. And then in that, people who are good facilitators or trainers can then come for the certification. Or if you want someone within your organization to be to sort of run it, because you then will be running half-day workshops, and they provide all the tools, so the slides, the videos, the technique, the methodology, and then even the ongoing research. So on a monthly basis, people become more and more aware of what gamification really is about and game-based research and the assessments itself. So there's one part is the workshops where the skills are being translated. The other is also the assessments. So you can test people for recruitment or for talent development, I send you a link for between 15 to 15 minutes, depending on the proficiency level of the individual. We would you would play a game, and then we can spool the AI behind tells us whether you're adaptable, how you are in terms of your complex problem solving techniques, or even how you in terms of persistence and whether or not you give up easily, and your analytical ability. So it then shows us what that does, and you can then start a conversation with people around. You know what? This is where we are. And then we can use these games in between to sort of build on that deliberately. Because for skills development, there's proficiency levels. It just doesn't come upon people. And some people are better than others naturally. Because someone says, oh, you know what? I'm not really a game person. But it's not about being a game person. It's about how do you want to pick up the skills. If you could pick it up in between, 30 minutes before another meeting or on your way home, and you just sort of play it, and somehow you're like, I can apply this principle at work tomorrow, then you're sort of like in little bits and pieces, adding to your proficiency level.
Fantastic. So these are called soft skills, aren't they? These top 10 skills
Yeah.
that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So I really want you to stress exactly why it's important, because we should stop calling them soft skills.
Yes.
Soft skills tends to make people think they're sort of some sort of ancillary support skills to have, but these are really the main issue now.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's funny you mentioned, because I wrote an article once, like soft skills are the new hard skills.
Yeah.
Yes.
Soft skills are the new hard
So
skills.
stop calling it soft skills.
Absolutely, because also when you talk to people, this is not even, it's not even focused on any industry or any continent, or it's just skill, complex problem solving, decision making, flexible thinking, coordinating with others, even how to collaborate has become a skill.
Yes.
People management is a skill.
Yes.
It's one of the top 10 skills. So it's also things, I mean, I like that you say don't call them soft skills.
Yes, we can't call them
Yeah.
soft skills.
Yes.
Because when people are hiring, myself included, I'm sure everybody else, we hire more for character than competence.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Because you
yes.
can train when it comes to knowledge.
Yeah.
But these so-called soft skills
Skills,
really determine the person that you're dealing with.
Absolutely, and then you're never even able to assess it fully. How do you know that I have great complex problem solving skills when
This is
you
what I was
interview
asking
me?
you earlier.
Yes,
So
you know,
how do you demonstrate that
Yeah,
in an
so
interview?
you can in an interview we can ask you specific questions, but what we then do now, we just use the assessment. So I send you a link and you play a game.
Then you assess
Before,
that.
yeah, so the game, the result comes in and says, this is how the person has scored. They give adaptability, they're 40, so they give up easily, persistence is there. So it scores you based on how quickly you responded to the answers, how long it took for you to get there, and they sort of create.
All right, we're going to ask you to hold that thought. We're
Yeah.
going to go on a break. When we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're with Ngozi Adebiyi. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the morning show. We're still speaking with Ngozi Adebiyi, CEO and lead consultant at OutsideIn HR. Before we went on break, we were talking really about how we should be calling these skills that you've mentioned really hard skills, because they're the ones that are really pushing forward a lot of economies globally. When you look at some of these skills, these are some of the skills that a lot of big technology companies, big renewable energy countries are relying on. So I want to ask you a question. When you look at the numbers before you came on that we talked about leading into your introduction, which is that there's 20% unemployment, 23% underemployment. When you put those numbers together, you're looking at some very dire and scary numbers. Earlier, we talked about people fleeing African countries, African and Arab countries for opportunities. When you start to see these numbers and you start to see the fact that opportunities are shrinking, but needs are growing, how do we start to align these skills with the right people? How do we get these skills into our educational systems? How do we prepare people for the next, for jobs, really? That's really, at the end of the day, what we want. We want to prepare people for the workplace.
I think the first step is really just talking about it and being, sort of what we're doing now, just creating more awareness and having the conversations. Because a lot of times also we've assumed that, some of these things are, some of these skills are, even for those who on senior levels or in top government organizations, it almost seems as though they feel like, this is something that is not that important. So first, talking about it, I think, is the biggest thing. And secondly, also demoing the fact that if you're looking at this compared to where we're coming from, we really need to be conscious around how we develop it. But every time you talk about games, even when you engage people just say, okay, you know what, this just might be for our graduate trainees. Without really thinking first, this just has to be for our execs. First off, because I feel like we equate experience with having the skills, and it has nothing to do with that. which is
Especially like when you talk about emotional intelligence.
Yeah, or you even talk about, even just coordinating with others. The people who are like super, like, this is not coordinating with others. Why? We just do what you have to do and go. We didn't come here for friendship. You hear those kind of phrases in the workplace, but the future is really around collaboration. People are going to be having to do things more. So how are we infusing that even in the way that we're trying to assess people, individuals in the organization? Is there like 5% of the key areas tied to how you coordinate with other people? You know what I mean? How you bring in complex problem solving? What else are you doing around it? And not just for our trainees. The millennials are coming. Oh, this gamification thing is really fun. It sounds interesting. Let them be the ones. I'm an exec. I really there are more important things to talk about. But then that's not the point, because
so when you go into a client and a client says, "Oh, I want you to come and do this for our management trainee," how do you get that into the executive suite?
So first off, you want to engage with I call them the economic buyer. So either the HR leader who has the budget or the CEO who has the budget, and then to be sure that we're able to have those conversations with them. So even sometimes it's like, I just want to have a meeting with you. And when I get there, I'm like, this is what I want to demo to you. And it's like, oh, I didn't know, I brought somebody else in. But I'm happy that they're in the room, because if you said, I'd like to just show you stuff around gamification, most times they will say, you can talk to the head of learning, or you can talk to somebody else.
We'll talk to IT.
Or a combination of that. So I think the first thing is the awareness that these skills are here, they're real, and then there are also fun ways to teach it in a way that is sort of like in bite sizes. So you're not going to have to be in a classroom. Even the workshops are half a day. So between 1 to 4 or 5 p.m. is done. And then you have an app on your phone that you can play, have access to the games over the next 6 months. So it's also, it's also ongoing, exactly. So, but the conversations have to be that the more senior people are having, because so that it cascades down, appropriately. I think that's the first part. The other part is also to then, what gets measured gets done. So if you're not also saying, we're going to be really looking at how we reward this, even if it's just recognition for starters before we start to, fully assess people. I think that's also another leg in, you know what I mean, where you're like, you know what, this is important. How we coordinate with others is important as a function. So if you're in finance or you're in HR, how are you as a function? So the function head has responsibility and to ensure that their function is collaborating with other functions, especially those who you don't really work well with. I think that should be the charge, right? If you have one customer, as it were, maybe finance and HR don't really work well together, then both functional heads have to make a call as to, we need to be able to get our people talking. First, we have to even start to ensure that we're coordinating better. So it's...
You cannot overstate the point of how this improves efficiency of any organization.
Absolutely.
And we meet quite a variety of people doing this job. But last week, we had a guest, Andrew Nevin, the chief economist at PwC. And I told you, what struck me about him first was his emotional intelligence. Even apart from his intellect and, the knowledge that he had to share, the way he expressed it told me immediately, because these are traits that jump out at you, whether or not we know the phrase to call it by. And it actually enhances what the person is saying. It enhances whatever service that they're delivering. Now, like with my children's school, for example, their report cards, they have their grades. You scored this, whatever, in your exams. Then you now have a section about attitudes to homework. Playing with other people. It's so important. That is part of the whole
skills.
Picture.
And I think it's another thing that you touched on when you just mentioned the exec you mentioned, that a lot of people are doing deep work, and for themselves, with themselves, things like having an executive coach, some things like engaging and sort of like meditating, which are things that you tell people in Nigeria, that's so boyish. It's like, what are you saying? Or you go to, you're trying to pitch and say, do your execs have coaches? Do they have a sounding board? Do they have somebody that they can just go to talk to? And it almost sounds like this is not what it is. It's not.
Are you seeing a turnaround in that attitude?
Yes, there is. But it's sort of like a slow shift, because I feel like even the value that's put on it. So if somebody says, oh, you have to get an executive coach, and you charge, maybe the coach charges, I don't know, 70K, 100K, 120K per hour or something to have a conversation, people are like, why? And I'm like, the question about, if you ask why, this is the kind of thing when the individual shows up, you can tell that there's...
It shows.
It shows. But then if we have to do a bit more around just looking at what's the value and the awareness.
So if awareness is the key, and you sort of have an opportunity now, help us understand the role of an executive coach and why it's important.
Okay. So first off, like we said, everybody is going through all of the challenges they're going through. But coaching itself, I think I have to say, first off, is a word that in Nigeria, I think everybody is a coach, or every other person seems to be a coach. But it's important to know that coaching is on a continuum. So I would say, first off, when you think of coach, you may think, oh, games, like football coach,
Sure.
or somebody like that, or like in sales, in corporates. When you think of coaching, even you're thinking, oh, you know what? I'm a sales director. I'm going with you for an accompaniment. You know, I'm going to the whatever industry we're in, and just sort of telling you. But coaching, from the executive coaching perspective, is on the other continuum where you're asking questions, because you're supposed to be partnering with the individual to release the potential that they have, and that all the answers lie within them. They will have the answers. They're just going to you have to ask them the right questions, and it takes a different type of coaching or coach training to be able to learn how to ask those questions. But then the importance of it is that then they can open up to the individual, and then they have a sounding board, somebody they can speak to every other month or once a month. And you're saying, these are my challenges, how am I struggling? And then they can hold you accountable. Because we're all human, and you have to find an outlet. And I think it's not about being Oyiboish, for lack of a better phrase to use. It's not Western. You're human. You have to have an outlet and to be able to speak to somebody so that you know exactly how to coordinate yourself and become better in what you do. And that also is cascaded down. Plus, there's the pressure of being Nigerian in itself, which, you know,
quite considerable.
Absolutely. So even that in itself. And for coaches are even encouraged to have coaches as well. So you must have a supervising coach.
The coach, a coach of the
coach.
coach.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
because also they have to not get into the story of their clients, and sometimes that's it. And then
They have to be
They
able to-
overwhelm
yes,
them.
yes, and then a lot of times also because there's confidentiality, you also can't be having the conversation with somebody else. You know what I mean? So you have to find an
Do
avenue.
coaches ever have to fire people? Like you're too
deal
much.
with you.
I mean, I'm sure that it happened
Have you ever had to fire someone?
No, but we've had to have a conversation about, you know what, can we review this coaching agreement? You know, and an interesting part about that coaching is that whoever is paying for is not even the client. The person paying is the sponsor. So the company is paying, the company is a sponsor, but the client is the individual. Your client is the person who you're speaking to, which is why we try to avoid some of this from the start when you say, you know what, we can have just a chat. You can see if we connect.
Okay.
And if we don't connect, it's like, you know, I don't think this will work, or we can have one session. If you feel we can continue, fine. But when we then have to continue, this is the coaching contract. So you get an opportunity to sort of check out the coach, and then the coach also gets an opportunity to say, I don't know if this person will commit or is not ready. Because sometimes they're not ready. It's just like the organization wants them to be ready.
Okay.
So just like, I don't want to talk to
That's a good one. That's a pre-firing, like, you know, you're not ready yet, so when you're ready, come back.
Yes. And, or maybe your organization is ready, but you're not quite
You're
ready.
not there
You're
as
not
an
there.
individual. But I
Yes.
wanted to ask you, from your vantage point of the Nigerian job market, we've talked about the unemployment statistics, which are terrible. What areas are most affected? What areas are relatively safe? What can people do to sort of avoid that dreaded firing word and all those scenarios? Because it's really quite alarming, the situation.
Yeah. So I think I love Nigeria, I really do, and I'm really passionate about Nigeria. I think the biggest challenge that we have also is that whole sense of continuous learning, I have to say. So first off, there's a lot of emphasis on processes as a people. So sometimes also you get someone that you're asking for, that I have to see your certificate, I have to see something for me to prove that this is right.
Yes.
And a lot of times people are now forced to, so everybody just wants to get a degree for starters, you know, and that helps me get a foot in the door.
Can you hold that thought? We
Yeah.
just need to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about the Nigerian employment space. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show. We're still in studio talking to Ngozi Adebiyi about the future of work. She is the CEO and lead consultant at OutsideIn HR. Before we were going on break, Tunu was talking to you about certification, about degrees, about the importance of it, and about how do we start to look at employment and how we screen people differently. I think that was...
Yes, So I think, first off, we have a challenge because we're like 10 countries in one. I mean, if you look at our numbers,
Fair
200 million, yes. So there's always that pressure of, like, people feel like, you know, I'm missing out, I have to get to the front, you know, I have to, be seen or make extra noise, that kind of thing. Plus, a lot of time, people have also even asked me as a HR person, why 2-1? I mean, there are people who make 2-2 and third class who are better, and I agree, absolutely. But then people just want to screen down the numbers, so we have to have some kind of scientific mode of doing that. But having done that, I find that more and more the pressure is now on a lot more on the certificate versus what we're getting, and that I think the organizations have to start to relook how we engage, especially now that there's some kind of brain drain as well. You know, with people leaving the country and moving.
How do you, from an HR perspective, how are you seeing that problem?
So it has become its own sort of like box. So, we lose people to maybe multinationals, then you lose people to, people just migrating out of the country. So it's becoming more and more obvious, especially for younger, so the middle managers, those who are like, have young families or sort of, a lot of them are exploring and just sort of saying, well, let me see what's out there.
Are your clients telling you this?
Yes, the clients who say that there are people who have sort of worked with, and then they're like, oh, I've gone. Even HR people, like, I'm out, I'm no longer here, I've relocated. And it's alarming. There was a stat, I think once upon a time somebody had shared, and he said he thinks it was an average of like 80 people who leave every week or every other week, something like that. I don't know how the
in
number
Nigeria.
In Nigeria,
Qualified
yes.
people.
Well, I don't know if, but for you to be moving to Canada as well,
You
or
must
outside,
be,
you must be at some level of. So
staggering.
that even for me, that hit me. It's like I never went back to ask like, where did you get that question,
data.
the data from? But it just was like, if that's really true, that's huge.
Do you know the sector or the sectors that are most affected?
So I think it cuts across, but I can imagine also like, I used to work in consulting. I run a consulting firm, and you tend to find that very bright people who are in that space as well are leaving, but across industries in itself. So there's that part, and so we have to start to relook how we engage talent in the future, whether or not we're just going to be stuck on 2-1 or 2-2 or just moving forward. From organization, I don't do that anymore. I used to initially. Now I just give you I send this assessment to you, and if you scale, then we even have a conversation, and then we run an assessment center versus just interviewing, because I feel like people have become even professional interviewers. You know what I mean?
Say
Like
the right thing.
you just know what interviewees, I think, is the right word. Yeah, you just sort of know. They just sort of, and you don't even get it 100% right, but at least you're on some track. So I think organizations and industries have to find what sort of works for them. But the era is going to come where it won't even matter whether this person has a first class or a second class upper. You're going to be looking and testing for certain skills, and if those skills are there, then you're going to proceed. I think also that the average, people spend an average of 4 to 4.5 years, I think, in roles these days versus 20-something plus years before. In my organization, I just ask people for a year. When I have a conversation, I just like, if you can stay for a year, that would be great.
Really?
Yes. I'm not saying that your contract is for a year, but if you can commit to a year so we can do things in a year, that's because the conversation has to change. You can't be, it's just sort of the commitment of we really want you to be here. These are the things we plan to do this year. Can you help us? Yeah, so say a bit of long term. And with younger people, again, it's funny, but it happened with us. Our parents' time was gratuity. When I got into the workplace, I was like, I don't want anybody keeping any money from me. Give me my money. You know what I mean? And so now I think for the people also, it's like, don't give me bonus at the end of the year. I don't want the end of the year. You can do quarterly bonuses. You can do bonuses on projects. You can do, so you've got to...
Instant gratification.
Because there's a microwave generation as well. At time you could cook and cook. Now I just toss it in the microwave. People are just not that
like, come on,
quickly, and if you think about it too, it makes sense. So people are more vested. But there's also a bigger problem that I don't know we can deal with today on this show is the sense of entitlement also. There's another...
let's go ahead and deal with it.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Because it's very important.
Yeah, there's a part that I feel like people are just also entitled. So, on one hand is like, is that the work or not? And the other is that sense of entitlement. And I feel like social media is maybe sort of, in our time, you go to work, you come back. I don't know what my secondary school friend was doing or is doing but now it's like, oh, someone's posing, oh my God, they just got a job here. They have this car, they have this. And it's like, can you focus on what it is that you're supposed to be doing? Because I think there's that part as well where enough depth, and we need to talk more. I feel we're not also sharing maybe enough of the stories. People come and I have my 10-year-old. I don't know if she's watched she did the earlier Lion King. But I feel like sometimes the Polaroid camera, I use the Polaroid camera. When we were younger, you could take a picture.
Yes.
And then we went to a party, and her friend's mom took. She's like, "Mommy, look at this! It's so cool." I was like, "Yes." In that time, we had it. She's like, "Really?" Like, she said, "In the olden days." I said, "Yes." In the olden days. So but. If we don't say that we had Polaroid, they would think that's new. So it's just that having those conversations around, you just need to be focused.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yes, and you have to decide where you want to. Is it skills or money? And even I had this conversation with mentors when I was like, oh, I really need to make money. It's like, you get the skills. You understand what you're doing, be deep. And then you can then move around. But this whole, I spent 5 months and I moved 7 months and then...
This is a very important point.
And people are just hopping. And then if I see you talk 3-4 times, I'm like, you're not stable. And you can't be stable in that way. So I think those conversations need to happen. where people are like, do deep work, do deep work. But, you know,
So you have your qualifications on your beautiful CV, you have your 2-1 or whatever it is that you have.
Yeah.
But then you have your spotty employment history,
Yes.
which tells of your character.
Yes.
Character is just inescapable. It's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question. So this week there was this firestorm on Twitter about internships being paid or not being unpaid. I would like to get from you, as someone that has worked in a lot of consulting companies, you run your own company, you work with clients every day. What is, and you don't have to, but what is sort of the thinking behind,
Yes, I am even excited to share.
Oh, yes, okay.
Because, again, it's that same thing of being entitled. I think what's important, you have to look at a company, a brand, and what they're doing. People, you can't overemphasize that. 17 years ago, was it 18 years ago, I interned at Merrill Lynch in Atlanta for $0. If I don't tell you, you wouldn't know.
Yes.
Last August, I went to Merrill Lynch, the office again. I spent the weekend at my boss's house because they invited me to stay. I'm saying we've developed a friendship. My summer internship, after that fall internship, was the guy saying there was no vacancy in the Atlanta office. So they called Emory. One of them's dad was the accountant general of the. Long story short, I interned at Emory with very good pay, but it's from a $0 internship.
You pay your dues.
Yes.
And then the Merrill Lynch is on my CV. You can never take it away from me that I interned 9 months in Merrill Lynch in the Atlanta office in Buckhead. You cannot take it from me. But I always tell people like this, and you know, you have to. What do I want to learn? I want to be. People say, oh, you talk so well, you can this, and you're not shy. Because I learned cold calling with my Nigerian accent. People call, hey, no, drop the phone, you know, and you're like, and then after a while, you just develop a thick skin, and so those are skills that you hone. Do you understand? Just walking somewhere. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't even pay for like a stipend or something. I was blessed. My uncle will pick me after work. I'll get there from school on a train or bus or whatever. But now, I mean, you've got to say, if I want to be a broadcaster, I can come and intern here. And I can ask and say, you know, I don't understand the workings of how this, so that in 6 months I can go away and say, excuse me, I worked here, and these were the skills I picked up. You know what I mean? Versus, it's about the money. If you put the money first, you're going to lose out on opportunities all the time. And I'm such a big, not even just a believer of it, it happened to me a lot of times. I left the bank, I won't name the bank, when I moved back to Nigeria, and I joined an FMCG. I took a $1 million pay cut then. It sounds like small money, but it could buy land on the island then. Seriously. And so if you looked at it, 1 year after I got promoted, I got, you know, a company car, I got some things, and I was like, my God, you can't equate that pay cut. But people were like, I can't get take a pay cut. I'm not encouraging that your life is, you know, you impact your family or whatever. Maybe I was blessed, so I was living with my parents, so maybe it didn't matter, but it could have mattered. Some people have said, I won't take it. But the question is, I knew that this company was going to take me places. They had the potential to train me.
And also, when you're changing, I mean, the journey is not linear.
Yes, it's not.
And you have to be willing to make sort of sacrifices along the way, ups and downs. And I mean, so the reason why, because this conversation, and I also ended up being in Nairobi where I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who has a couple of interns.
Yeah.
And she says, look, I feel like I'm teaching a master class every day. Absolutely. It's work for me.
And they're learning from you.
Yeah, she said it's work for me.
Yes.
And so I feel like there's sort of this two sides of the coin of like some people that say you must get paid, and then some people that said, look, you should pay me. She said they should pay her.
Yeah.
But it depends on your perspective on work. How do we sort of remove this idea of jobs as a means to an end and actually sell work as like something that gives your life meaning and dignity?
Yes.
When you look at your work in that perspective, you don't quibble about things like, am I being paid for this or not? Because you see the big picture. So how do we train that?
I think, again, I think we have to keep sharing and talking about these things, but I also know that our values are sort of like a bit, you know, not, you know, people have just sort of prioritized money a lot. You know, it's like, you know what, how much is it? People will move for 5K, you know, like, or 10K.
Totally.
Things like that. So I think the question also is it to do that so that you can do what with it, you know, or is it that I really see that there's value here, so I'm going to commit to being here? And I think it's maybe the more we talk, because if I remember, somebody has told me once in my career, like, don't worry about the money. I'm like, what do you mean, don't worry about the money? And it's like, you know, it will come. Just open your mind to the learning. Open your mind to trying to solve problems. Open your mind to the solutions. Do you understand? And then suffering never killed anyone, I have to say. I feel like sometimes also it's like, oh, we're suffering. I tell people, like you said, the person said, I'm taking a master class. Until they engage with that individual, they don't know the person's story.
Sure.
We also, people just sort of feel people were born and just started driving a car, you know? But people have also paid their dues and done some of the things you're doing now. And it's just like, I'm happy that your learning curve is shorter, you know, so you can move quickly. But you have to, you know, like someone said, you can't pregnant 9 women and expect that they give birth in 1 month just because there are 9 women. There's a 9-month process for is it gestation, isn't it? So there's that part as well. So the more maybe we share and talk to people,
I think
maybe
so.
maybe
It's
the more
important to get the message out, the counter message.
Yes.
So
I
the quite destructive message that's out there, like you're saying, comparison, the shallowness of social media is making people have some skewed priorities.
Absolutely. And some people will still not hear, but at least if you talk and 2 people hear, then that, for me, I think that's success, you know. But it's the stay focused, think about it, explore internships from what might I get here and the brand name and what it will do for me outside of here. Or if it's not the brand name, what does the company do? I have a small consulting company, but so far we do 1 or 2 things that not everybody does. So if you feel like I can learn this 2 or 3 parts and know that I've connected with this person, if people don't even know this brand name, but I can sell this skill, maybe in 2 years' time, I can move somewhere else. You understand? And become a better person. Then see that as the goal, beyond just also the money. And also have the conversations if you feel like, you know, because I tell people sometimes you don't even give us the opportunity to even help. Like, you know what, I'm moving because XYZ happened. You didn't say that. If you did, I could have said, you know what, I'll add you on to another project, and you probably can get extra from that project because. So, but let's have that conversation, and people need to talk more. I think so because I feel like people don't express, so they can talk and chatter on social media, but just sort of sitting and saying, Biola, you know what, this is what I really want to learn in the next 1 year. This is the kind of thing. I don't think people are not settling. That's why I said people are not sitting to think as well. Like, what do I want? And why can't I tell her? Do you think what's the worst that can happen? No,
and
you
really
can't
thinking about what your career, like sort of looking at it like a long-term
thing, not
sort
job.
of like,
a life.
Yeah, so exactly.
Yes.
Like in 5 years, I want to be able to do some of these things, learn this, learn that. Hopefully be able to maybe whatever it is also marry, have a child. Have that plan. Yes. But then also not work 5 jobs in 5 years, you know. It looks
because you don't give yourself the time to learn the skills you need to.
Yes, and to just be deep.
And it goes back to what you were saying earlier. The only thing of value is not money.
Yes.
And like the only thing of value is not a degree, not a certificate.
It's not, yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We hope to have you back soon.
I had a fun time. Thank you.